This is going to be kind of a difficult video to make. I desperately want to see handheld gaming PCs succeed, but I've noticed a number of problems within the industry, within the review process over the last couple of years that I feel need to be addressed. And no offense to OneXPlayer, they're going to catch my ire in this video, but it's basically every player in this game is doing the exact same thing. So, what happened today, and what are we going to do about it moving forward? Today's video is brought to you by Maximum Settings Cloud Gaming. This is a gaming PC, but it's not exactly portable. This is also a gaming PC, but it's not exactly powerful. What if you could turn any device you already own into a PC as powerful as this, while being as portable as this? With Maximum Settings Cloud Gaming, you get access to a powerful gaming PC in the cloud from basically any device you already own. For example, here's Helldivers 2 running on an Odin Lite Android handheld. Here's Cyberpunk 2077 running on my phone. Virtualized gaming machines start at just $9.95 Canadian, or around $7.40 US, and you'll be up and gaming just a few minutes after creating your account. Or for uncompromised performance, opt for bare metal access with an AMD 7800X3D CPU and a Radeon RX 7900 XT graphics card. Get the flexibility of a cloud gaming system without the hassle of building and maintaining one yourself. Visit MaximumSettings.com or visit the link down in the video description to get started today. And again, thanks to Maximum Settings Cloud Gaming for sponsoring today's video. Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. So I want to get this out of the way first. I love handheld gaming PCs. I've loved them long before I became a reviewer, and I still get that same Christmas morning level excitement every single time a new one arrives in my mailbox. I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to look at so many new devices these days, and I was particularly excited when I saw a request to review this one come through my inbox. This is the OneXPlayer X1 Mini, the spiritual successor to the OneXPlayer 2 that I reviewed last year. Contrary to the name about the Mini, there's nothing mini about it. Like the OneXPlayer 2, the X1 Mini is also an 8.8-inch slab handheld that's over an inch thick. That's partially for the impressive cooling that they put on board, but even more so for the absolutely gargantuan 65 watt-hour battery this thing holds inside. If that's not enough for you, there's also the X1, which is launching alongside the X1 Mini, and that steps up the 8.8-inch display to a 10.95-inch display, though the larger model does keep the same battery capacity. Both units get an estimated 4 hours of gameplay at 15 watt TDP and can stretch to up to 10 hours of less demanding retro titles or desktop applications. The specs of the X1 Mini are exactly what you'd expect to see in a premium gaming handheld. We've got a Ryzen 8840U with 8 cores and 16 threads, along with AMD's 780M APU graphics, sporting 12 compute units of RDNA 3. If you have a 7840U based handheld, don't get too excited about the top-end performance here. There's virtually no difference between the 8840U and the outgoing 7840U when it comes to gaming performance. That is, at least when we're talking about the high-end TDP. On the low end, low TDP performance has dramatically improved, so those wanting to stretch more battery life out of their handheld should definitely be paying attention here, despite this being basically a rebrand for the 7840U just for 2024. I didn't do a ton of performance testing today, for reasons we'll get into shortly. For that, I recommend you go check out the Fox, aka Carrie, who has done some very comprehensive deep dives into the performance of this new APU, namely around the 2024 GPD WinMax 2. By the way, Carrie, I still have your LTT screwdriver. Sorry. Other notable specs in the X1 Mini include dual Thunderbolt 4 compatible USB-C ports, a USB 3.2 Type-A, micro SD card slot for storage expansion, easy storage expansion as you just need to remove 4 screws from the back and you can replace the onboard M.2 NVMe drive in here. This also has an Oculink port for external graphics via devices like OneXPlayer's own OneX GPU. That provides a Radeon 7600M to up your graphics horsepower considerably when you're using this in a docked configuration. There's also the screen, which has been given a very modern facelift over the OneXPlayer 2. While we're looking at a 2560 by 1600 resolution screen, we've gone from 8.4 inches to 8.8 inches with a much smaller bezel, and we've gone from 60 Hz to an incredibly fast 144 Hz IPS panel here. And it really is a thing of beauty. The X1 and the X1 Mini are available right now via crowdfunding on IndieGoGo, and I'll include links to that down in the video description. These links are not affiliate links, but they do provide viewers on my channel some slight discounts for the referral. And I think that's as good a place as any to start diving in. I cannot, in good faith, recommend the X1 Mini as it sits right now. And this time, it's not just the crowdfunding that's got me nervous. It's the state of the hardware itself. So, let's dive in. Regarding crowdfunding, as Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd, likes to say, don't spend money on crowdfunding campaigns that you cannot afford to set on fire. Crowdfunding is not a pre-order, even though nearly every established company treats them as such these days. Sites like IndieGoGo and Kickstarter offer no guarantees to the pledges that you commit. Companies are under no obligation to fulfill rewards or send hardware that they are displaying. That also includes potentially not including key features or specs that you might be counting on. Nearly every single handheld that I've reviewed over the last 3 years, whether it be from OneXPlayer, Neo, or GPD, have all launched every single model on crowdfunding sites. And at this point, I really want an answer as to why. Why do these established multi-million-dollar international companies with established user bases in a rapidly growing market segment still utilize crowdfunding as a method of pre-ordering? Because there's no guarantee to anyone backing these campaigns, I'm always hesitant in recommending them, regardless of how good the product may seem. Now, I have good faith in OneXPlayer and GPD and Neo that they are going to deliver the products that they're advertising, but they're under no requirements to do so. I also have the rare benefit of getting review samples to most of these handhelds before they're publicly available, and while some have been absolutely fantastic, today we're looking at the X1 Mini, and this unit alone is making me rethink if I want to be involved in handheld reviews at all moving forward, let alone in the prototype stages of things. First off, the hardware and fit and finish are absolutely exceptional here. OneXPlayer calls my review sample of the X1 Mini a prototype. They stamped it on there like 3 different times. But there's obviously been a ton of money and development spent on tooling and manufacturing to get to this level of polish. The main body of the unit is dense and very, very premium feeling. The screen is absolutely gorgeous. All of the ports align just so with their openings. Everything about this feels like a finished unit. Now in front of me, I also have the OneXPlayer 2, which I reviewed a little over 15 or 16 months ago. My one major complaint about this was that the modular controllers on the side felt extraordinarily flimsy when they were connected to the main body. They wobble around and just don't feel right. On the X1 Mini, that concern is absolutely a thing of the past. These new removable controllers, if I can get one here, they lock into this dock with a much smaller connection, but the tolerances and the fit between the body is so much tighter that you can sure-handedly grip this thing. There's almost no flex at all to be felt between the controller and the body. It's a much more premium-feeling device. The reason I say all of that is that those features and attributes aren't typical from a company that needs to use crowdfunding to continue development or refine manufacturing abilities to be able to sell their device. This hardware is already complete. They just need to take orders for it. But as you are well aware, hardware is only part of the process. Anyone can buy and assemble the best specs available, but that doesn't mean you're going to wind up with a quality device in the end. Now, I'd love to tell you all about the Ryzen 8840U and how well it performed, but the software in this early sample is so incomplete, I was not actually able to review it. Now, it's not that unusual as a reviewer to receive software or hardware that isn't quite final or quite complete. Sometimes this is a non-issue, like a trivial feature is missing, but the core of the device is functional enough to properly evaluate it. That is not the case this time around, and this is the second such time I've had this particular issue with OneXPlayer. I've mentioned in previous video reviews of handhelds that basically every manufacturer that makes handhelds today is on equal footing when it comes to performance, mainly due to the lack of competition in that space. The hardware currently available with the right balance of performance and efficiency is the Ryzen 7840U and now the Ryzen 8840U. We know how they perform, and we know exactly what to expect out of them. So handheld buying decisions really come down to other factors, like battery life, screen size, control scheme, or software services and integration. Let's start off with issue number 1 in reviewing the OneXPlayer X1 Mini. The prototype that I was shipped is a Chinese language install of Windows 11 Home. Unfortunately, the license on this particular SKU only allows for a single language pack to be installed, and as Chinese is already installed, you can't add English to it. Windows 11 Home also doesn't allow you to change the region after install, so forcing a North American region and language pack was also a no-go. So, I got a Chinese language version of Windows. Inconvenient, but not a deal breaker. I can power through and get the benchmarks I need. Right? Issue number 2, again relating to the software options and user experience. OneXPlayer's OneXConsole was not installed on this unit. OneXConsole is their custom app for configuring various hardware and software settings on the device, like TDP adjustments, control scheme configuration, RGB for the controller, fan speed, as well as game optimizations for setting up the best performance out of this hardware. Along with all of OneXPlayer's internal test software, there was an installer of an alpha version of OneXConsole on the device, which I did install, but then it crashed immediately after launching. I also tried launching and installing a couple previous versions of OneXConsole from their website and got the exact same result. While I've taken a look at OneXConsole on previous OneXPlayer devices, I still need to know what the implementation looks like on this device, and if OneXConsole introduced any bugs that are specific to this hardware. We're also dealing with new hardware like the Ryzen 8840U, and again, based on other reviews I've seen from the Fox and others, I wanted to take a look at 10-watt TDP gaming. Without the right control software, I can't adjust the TDP, which means I can't get accurate benchmarks, which means I can't properly evaluate both the hardware and the software of the X1 Mini. I did go ahead and run a couple benchmarks anyway, just to see if I could get some relative performance numbers against the 7840U, but results have been pretty wildly inconsistent. The default TDP appears to be 25 watts as reported by Hardware Info, but individual runs of benchmarks have been all over the map, with scores being upwards of 20% apart in concurrent runs. So yet again, I'm not able to benchmark performance in its current state. I've encountered other software bugs as well. S3 Sleep, for example, is completely broken, which isn't a huge surprise on a new CPU platform, but it is something I still need to mention in case it's not fixed before the retail release. So at this point, some people have probably already questioned why I didn't just install a fresh version of Windows with an English language pack, install the drivers, and do the benchmarking, and quit being such a baby about doing my job. Well, again, Windows installs are kind of my specialty, so I captured a backup image of the install that I received on the X1 Mini, I wiped the drive, I installed Windows 11 Pro, I also kept a backup of the driver repository from the previous install, as well as the test app installers left behind by OneXPlayer's developers. Rewinding the clock about a year to the last OneXPlayer device I reviewed, that is the OneXFly, I took aim at AMD for causing more heartache than necessary with hardware makers in regard to AMD's APU driver packs. To allow OEMs to implement custom TDP settings, AMD has been forcing them to basically compile their own APU and chipset drivers, specific to their individual hardware. In short, that means if you ever need a graphics driver update for your handheld, you'd better hope the device manufacturer compiles one for you, because AMD downloads just didn't work. In the case of the X1 Mini, in my fresh Windows 11 Pro install, I downloaded the latest drivers of the 8840U directly from AMD's website, and they installed with no issues whatsoever. So bravo to AMD for either listening or realizing how asinine that policy was without my help. Every other driver that I needed, I installed through the existing driver repo or through restore files on the SSD. Every driver installed without issue, except for one. My new install wasn't able to play sound. The onboard audio drivers were up and running, and I had a volume slider in the taskbar, but the speakers just straight up refused to work. There were two different compatible audio drivers in the previous install. One is part of the AMD 8840U driver package called AMD HD Audio, and the other being built-in package from Microsoft. I tried both drivers, and neither of them resulted in working audio. Definitely an issue, but not one that would prevent me from benchmarking the system. For TDP adjustment, I installed Handheld Companion, which has a very wide array of device compatibility and should allow me to adjust TDP settings on the 8840U. So finally, I was ready to lay down some frames, test speed and latency, test battery life, and start making my notes around ergonomics and usability. So I launched my first game, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, obviously, and right away ran into issues that caused my review to just stop dead in its tracks. My game controllers on the X1 Mini are either defective or have not been factory calibrated, as every analog input is wildly off. My left stick is around 30% offset to the left. My right joystick is about 10% up and right. My left trigger bottoms out at about 9%, meaning it's always registering an input unless I were to input 10% of dead zone, which is just insane for a modern Hall effect trigger. That all means if I wanted to benchmark the device, I'd just need to ignore the controller and ergonomics entirely, which is what most of my reviews typically revolve around because, as I stated, performance is kind of a equal factor when reviewing handhelds these days. Sorry, as you can tell by the beer, this is an addendum to this video. I don't think I mentioned that Handheld Companion was not able to change the TDP settings on the 8840U. The slider was available, but it would not change between 15 and 25 watt. I couldn't drop it down to 10 watt and even do my benchmarking if I wanted to. The machine seems to be locked at 25 watts. I will go ahead and give some early thoughts around the controller on the X1 Mini, as they are planning on making this a full production run. Like I said earlier, the controls on the X1 Mini are far more comfortable than on the OneXPlayer 2. All of the inputs on the controller are very easy to reach, and feel like I'd be more than comfortable holding this device for extended periods of time, in spite of the very heavy main body section. But these controls are going to be a love it or hate it affair, with me falling into the latter category. The joysticks are featherweight, with little to no resistance at all. In my experience, that actually makes it more difficult to precisely aim with the joysticks, as you're relying on your thumb to hover in place at specific XY locations, rather than having any feedback at all and pushback from the springs. The buttons on here are exceedingly clicky, and also exceptionally mushy. It's a combo that I don't think I've felt since Mad Catz was making controls for Player 4 in Mario Party. They're that bad. The ABXY buttons are so bad, they actually feel like they have two-stage triggers to them. They're soft, but resistive for most of the throw. But then they hit this hard stop before you hit the resistive button underneath it. And it's extraordinarily unpredictable as to when in the travel you're actually going to actuate an input. And all of them are different from each other. The Y button is the worst of them all. It's just awful. Like, I can press it down, I get a hard stop, and then I can press it again and I get a click. So it's like literally halfway stop, halfway click. They're just bad. As far as the D-pad, yeah, the D-pad is worse. It is an 8-way D-pad, but they used momentary press buttons like you would use on ABXY, but on a D-pad. And on a D-pad that floats above all four buttons at the same time without any guidance as to which direction you want to press. So what that means is I can actually press in the D-pad and actuate all four directions at the same time. If I wanted to go down left, for example, I would press down and left, right? But if I press too hard, it'll also actuate up. And if I press a little harder, I can also get it from that location to actuate right. It's just bad. As far as other buttons on the device, there are 4 function keys, 2 on either side of the screen. There are Start and Select as the outside buttons, and then a keyboard hotkey and an Xbox menu button closer to the inside of the screen. Placement is nice. I can reach them without reaching too far. It's a very natural motion. But the buttons are too small and they're too close together. And I can see people not being able to differentiate one button from the other. For example, Select is a very common button these days for bringing up your inventory in games like Tiny Tina's or Cyberpunk. But it's right next to the Xbox button there on the inside, which means you might accidentally pause your game and bring up Steam's big picture menu instead of accessing your inventory. It's not ideal. Beyond that, I think the shoulder buttons are okay, but it'd be nice to actually be able to play a game with them, to tell you for sure. I started off this video stating that I love handheld gaming PCs, and I really do mean that. It's a form factor that I desperately want to see not only succeed, but continue to improve as the years go on. Since the launch of the Steam Deck, most handheld enthusiasts have been on Cloud 9, as we've never had devices with this level of performance or this level of accessibility before. That being said, I think there are a number of players in this space that need to take a step back and ask if the product that they're putting out is truly their best. When I see OneXPlayer, and Neo, and GPD, all coming out with 2 or 3 new devices and new form factors every single quarter sometimes. It makes me wonder if they're starting to spread themselves a bit too thin. And all of them are putting devices on crowdfunding campaigns, only to literally 3 to 6 months later come out with 3 or 4 new devices or new iterations or new form factors. That's going to sour a lot of people in this space, because the OneXPlayer 2, for as many good ideas as it had with the modular joysticks and the slab-like large display, the kickstand, this has a lot of those same features. It's basically the same principal device. But this, with its wobbly controllers, feels like the prototype to this. And if I spent $1,000 on this, I don't think I'd ever buy a OneXPlayer device again. In fact, I even bought the keyboard so I could evaluate that. I never made a video on that, but this keyboard's awful too. And the keyboard doesn't even work on the new device. They have a different keyboard that is exactly the same with the pogo pins offset to the side. That's the difference. It's the same keyboard, but rather than engineer it so it would work on both devices, now you have to buy a different keyboard too. The X1 Mini, in its current state, is not ready for retail. And heck, I don't even think it's ready for reviewers yet, which is likely why I've only seen a couple unboxing and overview videos and not in-depth performance and analysis videos that I usually see from the usual suspects in this place, like the Fox and RetroDodo. That leads me to believe they may be having problems similar to what I am. And given that the X1 Mini's IndieGoGo campaign launched nearly 3 weeks ago, and that was the embargo date for this, we've all had this device for like 5 or 6 weeks now. No one's made a video on it yet. So I've been talking to you, the audience, for a while, but I want to take an aside, and I want to talk to OneXPlayer. You guys made my favorite handheld of the last year in the OneXFly. It's a 7-inch 7840U powered device with fantastic performance, amazing battery life, ergonomics that are second only to the Steam Deck. It feels absolutely right and balanced and perfect in my hand. While there are definitely reasons to look at other form factors, I see a couple areas where you might be stretching yourselves too thin, or maybe just not allocating enough resources where they belong for your devices to be successful. Like I said, every handheld that's on the market today is based off essentially the same chip, the 7840U, the 8840U. You're not going to win with performance. You're not going to win by saying we cram 54 watts down its throat, Neo. It doesn't lead to performance gains. What you need to deliver to us with that chip is good cooling and good battery life. Screen size and ergonomics are 2 factors that you do have some control over, but there are still technical and physical limitations of what can be done here. And I'll be honest, as good as the OneXPlayer 2 and I think the X1 Mini are as far as hardware goes, these are heavy, chunky, not exactly portable devices. I don't know very many people who are clamoring for a 1-inch thick slab with Joy-Con knockoffs on the side. It's a cool idea, and like I said, I think the X1 Mini ergonomically and physically is so much of an improvement over the OneXPlayer 2 that it's actually usable at this point. It was comfortable to hold. But why not just this? Why not just this? What people will remember, regardless of what device of yours they buy, and I'm talking to OneXPlayer and Neo and GPD and anyone else who happens to be listening, they will remember terrible end-user experience and terrible software. And that's the one thing that you have the most control over. And it's the one area that I believe the X1 Mini is not ready for today. And because of that, I can't recommend it. But I want to see it succeed. I hope that OneXPlayer can address the issues that I have here today, because the hardware itself is a very compelling package. Hopefully you'll see this extremely negative review as encouragement to do better, and not just a reviewer who got fed up with software that wasn't ready for prime time, because I do want to see you do better. Also, OneXPlayer, Neo, GPD. It's time to grow up and take pre-orders like the big boy companies you are now. Stop crowdfunding. Stop it. And start reinvesting in a community that's hungry for more than just the same AMD CPU in yet another form factor or another style of device. Stop with the 7 variants that come out every half year. Stop with the gimmicks. Stop with the removable Joy-Con controllers on a 1-inch slab tablet. Stop with the 54-watt TDP claims on a 25-watt chip that will never achieve that. Stop trying to win the performance battle and be bigger and, biggest screen and highest resolution. I want one of you to make one handheld, invest into software, and make sure it is the one and only handheld worth talking about in this space. Because you're all stretching yourselves too thin. I will say, I contacted my representative at OneXPlayer and gave them a detailed list of the issues that I encountered. And they did respond very quickly with detailed reactions to every single point that I brought up. Some of the issues, like S3 sleep not functioning, may be related to the controllers not being calibrated. The speakers not working in my reinstall attempt are likely due to a missing driver from Harman Kardon, not necessarily a fault of the AMD chipset drivers themselves. There's some deeper integration that I didn't quite have all the installers to. Now, I informed OneXPlayer that I was going to make a video around crowdfunding and around the difficult review process that I've had for a couple of their early handhelds. They did ask that I don't frame it as a consumer warning, but they didn't ask me to not publish the video. And that, to me, speaks volumes about them as a company, as they're not afraid to take valid criticism. Obviously, the goal of any company PR is to present the most positive narrative possible, but in a case where they did screw up, they sent out a prototype that was not ready for review. They don't have solutions for the software as it sits right now today for me to literally open the box and review this product. They're also not trying to silence me, and that deserves a hell of a lot of respect. So hats off to you, OneXPlayer. Their plan right now is to send me a production version of the X1 to fully review, rather than the prototype that I have right now. I've also suggested to them that in the future, I am more than happy to receive prototype units early in the process and provide feedback directly back to OneXPlayer. But I will no longer be making review videos without final hardware in my hands. This is going to be my standing policy for all handheld PCs, as my goal as a reviewer is to inform your buying decisions, not just show you the new hotness that could be that you might get through a crowdfunding campaign. And I can't do that without seeing the final product. I'm hoping that this video isn't coming across by all of you as just me bashing OneXPlayer because you made my job difficult for a week. My relationship with them has been fantastic through the years, and this video is more about the state of handheld reviews, some of the background that you guys don't get from a reviewer going through the process, and how I want handheld reviews to be handled in the future. I also want established companies to stop using crowdfunding as a method for accepting pre-orders, as again, all of them in this space are more than mature enough at this point that they shouldn't need additional financing to make new products. They've proven, especially with the X1 Mini, with as polished and far along in the process as they are, this device hardware-wise is ready to go. They just need to take orders for it. Now, I went through a lot of information in this video, but I am curious on your guys' perspective as well. I think I know your answer already, but please sound off in the comments below. I try to frame a lot of my handheld reviews around ergonomics, usability, software experience, again, because I feel that's the defining factor of handhelds today. There's not a lot of difference between one 7840U and another 7840U. It comes down to, can you use that 7840U and can you hold that device for extended periods of time? What do you guys want to see out of handheld reviews? Do you want to see pushing performance to its absolute max? Do you want to see, saving battery life to its absolute max? Are you only curious in what the new CPU processors are and things like that? Or are you more interested in a buyer's guide for complete products that you can buy today? Sound off in the comments. On your way down there, don't forget to drop this video a like, subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already, and if you like the content you see on this channel, head on over to craftcomputing.store. We've got custom laser-etched nucleated pint glasses that are designed and manufactured right here in-house by me, as well as everything else from beer installation floppy disk coasters to bottle openers to whiskey stones and scotch glasses. So, everything you need to start drinking like a pro. But that's going to do it for me in this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers, everyone. Beer for today is from Bellflower Brewing up in Portland, Maine. Wrong Portland, but I'll forgive it. I got all these numbers in my head. This is a rotating series of IPAs available from them. This one clocking in at 7%. Ooh, that is very sweet. Very sweet nose. That is not what I expected at all. I got all these numbers in my head. Boy, that would make for a fantastic beer pairing had I run any benchmarks in this video. This is a very surprising IPA. Aroma-wise, like I said, my first whiff of the can, very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. Honey, hibiscus, lavender. Some very interesting notes that I don't normally expect from IPAs are coming through here. It's a New England hazy, and it's citrus forward. But there's some of the flowery notes that we get from more West Coast IPAs that are also very present in this beer. And I can't remember a beer that I could say that both notes were present at the same time, and they complement each other beautifully here. Body-wise, it is not intense. This is a very soft-bodied beer. There's not a lot of harsh flavors. There's no immediate flavor changes. Very smooth. It's very approachable. I hate to say this, but this is a hazy you could have on a summer day. Like, it is that level of smooth. And normally, hazies are the last thing that I want after mowing a lawn. This is pretty good.